Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And a couple of months ago, I made a video discussing Nintendo Directs in 2020 and how getting ready for 2021, was there a chance that we were still going to see Nintendo Directs? Or whether or not maybe Nintendo had completely moved on from them. Something that I think a lot of us discussed quite a bit throughout 2020 because of all the weird reasons and the slowness from Nintendo and other companies in the industry. And a lot of us focused in on Nintendo Directs because we weren't seeing them the same traditional way throughout the year, and the big conversation about whether or not they were done forever was a hot topic in 2020. So I touched on it one last time before the end of the year. Are we going to see Nintendo Directs in 2021, or are they gone forever? I shared my opinions at that time that I don't think that Nintendo has completely moved on from Nintendo Directs. And today I want to continue this conversation a little bit and explore it more now that we're officially in 2021. Don't forget, before I dive too much deeper into the Nintendo Direct topic, that I am currently pushing to cross 15,000 subscribers on the channel very soon. I am less than 100 away. Finally, hallelujah. I can tell you that I am less than 100 subscribers away from 15,000. I make and post several videos every single week here on Rule of Two Review, talking mostly Nintendo and Metroid, but of course, covering all sorts of gaming topics, everything. I run the gamut here. So as you watch this video, if you like what you see and you like what you hear, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel to help me cross that milestone very soon. So like I said at the beginning here, and like I also spent most of my time talking about in that video from 2 months ago, I personally am of the belief that Nintendo Directs are not dead and buried and that Nintendo has not completely moved on from them. I understand why some people think that that might be the case. There are a lot of reasons to believe that could be the case, and I'll get into that for sure in this video a little bit. But overall, I personally still think that Nintendo has to see way too much value in Nintendo Directs in the here and now, to the point that they would want to continue doing them in 2021. The hype cycle around the return of the traditional Nintendo Direct would be so huge, I guarantee Nintendo would see a return on the investment of creating that Nintendo Direct were one to happen. A common discussion around 2021 Directs has been the concept of a January Direct, which is something that I think a lot of us in the community, if you want to call us the community, have gotten this idea in our heads over the past few years that there's this January Direct every year. And I don't really know exactly where that came from, except for the fact that there's been, I don't know, maybe 2, maybe 3 Nintendo Directs in January that made a big splash. Most notably back in 2013, way back, 2013, you guys, 8 years ago. There was a very famous Nintendo Direct, they were very new at that time, that showcased Wind Waker HD for the Wii U and a couple of other things, and it was a very popular, successful Direct. It was probably the first one that made a huge splash. They were only 2 years old at that time. And then I want to say more recently, a 2018 January Direct. If I have my year right, don't quote me on that, but around that time, there was another January Direct that was also very strong and solid and exciting and got people very hyped for all sorts of Nintendo things. And because of this, I think we've just believed that there's always this huge January Direct every year. And really, if you look at the past 5-6 years, that's not actually the case. Sometimes they hold a traditional Direct, that's okay. Sometimes they hold a Nintendo Direct Mini, or one focused on a specific game like a Smash Brothers or a Fire Emblem. But for the most part, they don't always do a big Direct. And so here in 2021, people still continue to believe a January Direct makes sense. And people have been predicting, oh, there's going to be one on January 7th. There's going to be one on January 11th. And well, we're already past both of those dates and we haven't seen a Direct yet. Could they do one before the month is over? Yes, of course. We're only halfway through the month right now. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know all the answers. But I personally have been believing that we probably won't see a January Direct. However, I do think a Q1 Direct does make a lot of sense because I believe Nintendo Directs aren't gone and Nintendo is bringing them back this year. I think one in February or March feels more likely. Again, of course, this is just only my personal theory and prediction, but I do feel pretty good about it. I've been following Nintendo ever since the NES came out, when I was 5 years old in 85 or 86, I think, in the United States. So I feel pretty good about my history with the company and with gaming as a hobby and how I'm reading their potential 2021. So I feel great about a February or March Nintendo Direct. Now, if we explore a little bit the reasons why some people feel like Nintendo might have moved on from them, part of it does come from some quotes, right? Where Furukawa himself said just last summer, in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, that Nintendo is always reevaluating their messaging and marketing. I'm paraphrasing here, by the way. They're always reevaluating, and Nintendo Directs have been great for messaging in the past, but Nintendo's not opposed to possibly moving on from them sometime in the future. And that was a noteworthy quote. I discussed it at that time even. Yes, that does show that Nintendo is always open to changing up what they're doing and considering not doing Nintendo Directs anymore. I mean, yes, absolutely it does. But they also didn't outright commit to moving on from them either. And then in the months following that, they did bring back a newer, more unique form of Nintendo Directs in the form of the partner presentations. And I say that because, yes, the partner presentations were weird and different, and the first 2 or 3 really weren't very good at all, but they were technically under the Nintendo Direct banner, right? So even in the back half of 2020, the idea and the banner, the umbrella known as Nintendo Directs, did still exist, even if they were showing up in a different form. Of course, earlier in the year in March, they did give us an actual 30-minute Nintendo Direct Mini that I actually thought was pretty decent for what it was at that time. And there's a couple of other things they did. I mean, while they never gave us the traditional Direct that we've all been waiting for and wanting, that was way back in September 19, the last one that we actually saw. I do think that we saw signs that Nintendo wasn't completely done with the concept or the branding of Nintendo Directs. One of the things that happened in this past week that also kind of inspired me to want to make this follow-up video about this topic was a very interesting tweet from a very well-known YouTuber, someone you guys all, I'm sure, know, Arlo. And I love Arlo. I think he's a great dude. I love his channel. I love his content. I know that people get really particular and picky with his opinions and how he shares them, and some people think he's more of a downer than I really see him to be. That's whatever. I mean, your opinion of him aside, that's not really what I want to get into. I just wanted to share with you that I actually do like him. I am a fan. And he made an interesting tweet regarding the Bowser's Fury stuff from this past week and related it to Nintendo Directs. Started a big conversation. I shared my own thoughts on it. And I wanted to read it to you here real quick as a recap and kind of riff on what he's saying here a little bit. Today, everyone is talking exclusively about how cool Bowser's Fury looks and making jokes about DBZ and Gigantamaxing without a single other thing to get in the way. I really do not think big directs are coming back, folks. There just isn't any point. So, he makes an interesting point here. I mean, the general logic that he's describing isn't crazy. I clearly don't believe that. I mean, that's why I'm going to talk about it here, as I have a different point of view. But I understand his logic and I understand what he's saying. And, of course, I should also say, I'm not like, this isn't like a call-out or anything to Arlo. He's just a very high-profile Nintendo personality and YouTuber who made a statement that started a conversation that I find is interesting, and a lot of other people share this. So this isn't really about Arlo specifically. This is more about the sentiment that he and many other people share and my opinions on it. And my opinions are, obviously, like I said, I don't agree, but to explore the logic, what he's saying is all of the information Nintendo was able to get out to people, to get people hyped and excited and ready to spend their money, was done just by putting a trailer on the internet, putting it on Twitter, putting it on YouTube, stuff I've talked about that Nintendo managed to find success doing that in 2020. And so is Nintendo streamlining their messaging and saving money by not producing directs? We can't forget that aspect, you guys. A lot of people might not have thought about this part, but I'm sure that putting on a Nintendo Direct and filming it and paying people to edit and all the different stuff probably costs a pretty penny. I mean, on the low end, maybe 10 to 15,000. On the high end, maybe even 100 grand. I don't know. I'm really just kind of throwing numbers out there, to be fair. But when you think about what a production like that could cost for a big company, I'm sure it costs some money. And I guarantee you they spent way less to edit a 2-minute trailer and then put it on YouTube and Twitter. There's just one social media person who has access to Twitter and YouTube, and Nintendo paid an editor to make the trailer and then gave it to that social media person, and that social media person just made a couple of posts on social media. Dude, it probably took less than an hour to do that entire thing. They did not spend thousands of dollars. The only money spent was paying the people involved in making a trailer and then posting it online. And so part of what he's saying here is Nintendo is able to streamline their messaging and probably save a bunch of money by not making a direct, putting a trailer online, and look at the hype it generated. And from that perspective, that line of thinking to me does make a lot of sense. I think that there could be a situation where Nintendo has crunched the numbers, looked at the situation with Nintendo Directs, the hype it generates, the return on investment known as ROI, right? So the ROI on creating Directs compared to the ROI on putting trailers to hype people up on the internet. And Nintendo might be seeing that going forward, that might be the better way, the more efficient way and the cheaper way for them to drum up hype about their products. And man, I can't refute it. There's really a good chance that Nintendo sees similar things, and Bowser's Fury and the whole Mario 3D World thing could be a great example of this. Same with Hyrule Warriors and Paper Mario the Origami King last year. I mean, Nintendo did this a few times, and they definitely saw success. But for me, I still want to believe that Nintendo sees the larger value in the regular Nintendo Direct format, at least for now, okay? I'm totally open to the fact that in the coming years, maybe Nintendo moves on from the messaging. Maybe they even plan to do it, you know, in tandem with the release of their next generation console, whenever that comes, 22 or 23 per my theories. Maybe at that time they're going to rebrand so much about Nintendo with both their hardware and their messaging that Directs go away at that time. I believe in 2021 and possibly even into next year in 22 that we will see the return and continuation of Nintendo Directs. And I think part of the reason is, what Arlo is saying here is that a Nintendo Direct could muddy the messaging around a Bowser's Fury announcement, and by doing it this way, everyone is solely focused on that one product, which is true. But to me, that's if Nintendo only has one product that they want to promote. But what about when they want to promote a variety of things, multiple products, both their products and third-party software coming to their devices, the kind of stuff that they're partnered with these other companies, and these other companies probably want to see Nintendo push and market them as well. Nintendo solves a lot of problems at once by creating the Nintendo Direct format and showcasing a new Mario game and a new Zelda game and a new Metroid game and a new Animal Crossing game in the same presentation that they showcase Astral Chain and Bayonetta 3 and No More Heroes 3 and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. That sure was a lot of threes, wasn't it? But you know what I'm saying, right? A Doom Eternal is coming to the Nintendo Switch, a Mortal Kombat 11, you know, all these indie games. When they package everything together, yes, maybe people's direction and hype is focused on a lot of products at once, but I don't really think that that's a bad thing. I don't think Nintendo sees it as a bad thing. I don't think the third-party partners with Nintendo see it as a bad thing either. Yes, there's something to be said for just focusing the hype cycle around one product at one time, like Hyrule Warriors, like Mario Bowser's Fury. Yes, there is value in that. I see what Arlo and other people say. But personally, I just think that there's just as much, if not more, value on all of the hype packaged around a 20-minute direct presentation, the way Nintendo has trained us to be used to for the last decade, by the way. Nintendo kind of created this. I mean, they created Directs. They set the expectations for hype and Nintendo Directs and all that stuff, and really we're just following suit. And I think that there's way too much value there for Nintendo to let it go. So, you know, all of this blabbing I'm doing in this video at the end here is to just tell you that these are the reasons why I think Directs are not dead and gone, and I think we're seeing them return in 2021. So these are my thoughts and my guesses and predictions on what's going to happen. I think before March is over this year, we're going to see another Nintendo Direct, man. Mark my words, it's going to happen. And when it happened, you can say, hey, Rob called it, man. He was the one who said Q1 Direct, it's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, then forget that you saw any of this. Clearly, I'm joking. I'm obviously joking. If it doesn't happen, yeah, we can say that I was super wrong. And I'll talk about it at that time. I have no problem with that stuff. So either way, this is really fun to talk about. It's very exciting to think about Directs returning. I certainly hope that it happens. I hope that I'm right. And so I want to hear what you guys have to say about my thoughts and discussion here, and what are your own thoughts? Do you think Nintendo Directs are dead and gone? Do you think Arlo is right that Nintendo doesn't see a value anymore and they want to just focus on Twitter announcements instead? Or do you more follow my line of thinking and you think that there's still a value and Nintendo's going to bring them back? Whatever you think, talk about it below. Of course, do not forget to please consider subscribing to the channel if you like what I'm doing and what you saw here today. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.